And you might be thinking, have we not been doing the ab series? It's the front body. It's very specifically attending to this portion that we think of as our core, but it is the abdominal series. So we won't worry too much about transitions today. Let's just use the same one we did to get into our 100 to get into this next maneuver. So space between the knees, one fist. Plant your four corners of your feet, arms forward. And we get that tuck that we know, zip up, rolls us back. We participate in it, and then we ignition switch to get to the tips of our shoulder blades, and then we bring the knee in. Now, you might be thinking in this next move, why does she bring her knee all the way in? Because this leg goes all the way out, and that balances the pelvis. Otherwise, if this knee is all the way in, it's a little lopsided. If both knees are all the way in, we're tucked. It's not what we're looking for. We're stretching. That's why it's called a single leg stretch. Same hand as leg goes to the ankle. Opposite goes to the knee because those are easier places to reach. And we switch. And we imagine that we're rubbing the inner thighs on that little fake glass wall between them. Or maybe I like to think of Jiminy Cricket making music with his legs as he switches. And we continue here for 5 and 4. Good little hip cracks in here. 3. If your neck starts taking it, really hit that ignition switch. 1 more each side and switch. Good. Go ahead and put your feet down, head and shoulders down. Normally we do not put the head and shoulders down throughout the ab series, but I'm talking a lot today, so. Next piece of the equation is the double leg stretch. Let's do it in pieces. Go ahead and, some of you in the gym may have made a little diamond with your hands, a loose diamond, and put it under the hips. Let's do that here. And bring the knees right over your hips. Now, why do the knees get to come in closer on this one? Because of what the upper body does in a little bit. So hang with me. We are reaching the legs out, and as we do, really this hands beneath the hips isn't ideal, but I'm using it just to show you pieces of the move. We're taking the legs out. Do they need to be this low to the ground? Not really, because most of us can't articulate our pelvis for a bigger arch than this. And if I'm standing, this is about the height of my legs. That may not make sense right now, but my pubic bone is pointing straight towards my heels right now. If I take my legs down here, now my legs would be kind of behind me and my pelvis would actually be thrust forward. It's sort of pulling me up onto the tips of my shoulder blades, which has told me I've lost the natural curve of my spine. I want from about my mid-back, everything behind my ribs to be on the ground, everything below my ribs to be a little bit elevated to maintain those natural curves of the spine. So, in order to do that, I can only take my pelvis so far. And it is a move of the pelvis, not of just the leg inside the socket. So let's have our heels glued together really, really hard and tight, like nobody could ever pull them apart. And then start to shoot your legs out and bring your pubic bone as if it's tethered to your toes with you. And find where, my bottom rib's about to come up. So that means I need to go a little bit higher and then continue. That is your marker. If you are going lower and this is coming off the ground, that means you're moving inside your leg socket and not in your pelvis anymore. We want to keep unzipping and zipping our jeans. That's what's strengthening the pelvic floor core, and that's what we're here for. And I didn't mean to rhyme, but it happened. Okay, so that's the bottom piece of this equation, double leg stretch. The top piece, we've got our ignition switch on, and we're reaching and we're sweeping. And it's very militant in movement. So it's a big open stretch with an inhale and then a squeeze that starts to activate the side body core. So all of that, remember when we lowered onto the mat and we had the stability from our latissimus and these little teres muscles that support our shoulder and our lat muscles? activated, we're gonna feel that here too. It's not a flowery movement. It is very inhale, exhale, stretch, flex, right? Increase, decrease, compress. So if we watch it all together, let me get into that shape, and we're right here. And you do see a little peel of the pelvis. I have my Pilates stance, my toes apart, my knees about a fist distance apart. And again, it's an inhale. Let me find my special spot where, right about there, my bottom rib wants to come off the ground for me today. So I'm gonna bring it in, mark that place in space, and inhale, exhale. Inhale, sorry, cramp in the calf, bringing in, breathing out. Make space in the body with breath. Make space in the room with breath. Fill the body, fill the space. Let's do 3, 2, 1, and come down. So if you want to pause, back that up, practice it again. It really is stretching the walls of the core, the barrel of the core, and then compressing it all. Stretching, compressing, not just flexion and extension. There's a whole lot happening in this space. Next up in our abdominal series, we have scissors. Scissors is one of my absolute favorite exercises. So we see people and teachers say, pull, pull, switch, pull, pull. All this is doing is really jerking on the joint, and it's not creating the length that it's meant to. So that instruction is great to just get you moving, to get you to just know the order of the class, but it is not getting you to the heart of the movement. So the heart of the movement, ignition switch on, is stretching this leg longer and then switching. And we have that imaginary wall, that Jiminy Cricket. We're playing music with our little legs, violin legs. But we're also, let's think about, if you can only reach this far, then start at the bottom of the thigh, push that thigh, the muscle, into the bone until you feel your muscle, or until you feel your bone, and then try to iron it up. And what you're going to feel is a bigger stretch, or almost like a sense of opening right there where the glutes meet the back of the thigh. It's a push and then iron, and you probably see that really well right here with the white background. Let's push and then move all that muscle up to the back of the knee. In a more advanced body, in a body that's ready for a deeper stretch, we would move into the back of just above the knee. We never press on the back of a joint, but right at the base of the calf and do the same thing. So that here is move the muscle and stretch. Now, if you have knees that don't want to open a whole lot, but you can reach here, please do this because it's going to open the knee. What's happening with the other leg? We only go as far as we can. So just because this leg can go lower doesn't mean it should. If this is neutral and this leg comes this close without any effort from my arms, then that leg should only travel the same distance in the other direction. And then, like scissors, right, they evenly open and close. When I get this muscle to lengthen and open these joints more, that leg can move the same amount in the opposite direction. So it's move the muscle, iron it away. Switch, move the muscle, iron it away. All right, so pick which one works for you. Scissors. Let's start with the thigh version, and then let's switch to the calf version. It is move, move, switch, move the muscle in, move it longer. Again, muscle in, longer, muscle in, iron it longer. Now let's go to the calf if you can, otherwise stay where you were, and move the muscle in, lengthen, switch, muscle in, lengthen. And let's do 3. Whichever version you're working at, keep it going here, 2, and switch. 1 more each side. And come center, head and shoulders down. From here, we go into an exercise called the lower lift. The lower lift teaches us about that pelvis movement again, and we've already learned so much. If we get to a point where our lowest rib is leaving the ground, not the low back should have a little space, but your lowest rib, right? Then we've gone beyond our effective range of motion. So instead of lowering and lifting the legs and wondering why this is hurting in my groin, that's because it's your hip flexor and it's not the right muscle to recruit. Let's do this in the old school gym lower lift way first. So make that little diamond behind the pelvis. And remember that even though you have this diamond and the arms are bent, reach your elbows down, like towards the foot of your mat, and try and keep your shoulders on the mat, because every time we lower and lift the legs, especially if we're doing it a little bit the wrong way, the back of your neck's gonna get short and you'll end up kind of here. And it's really not only uncomfortable, but again, it's maneuvering the body in the wrong way, and you'll learn pretty quickly that that's not what you want to do. So from here, let's move from the pelvis, really letting the pubic bone follow the toes, and maybe just go about a third of the way, not even half. And then from here, zip up those jeans. Good, so let's look at the difference. If I use my legs, right, that's my legs. But let me use my pelvis and watch what happens in my hips. Maybe I shouldn't have worn black. So you can really see, it's almost like a little gear is turning right here. This little rotation, and now watch it turn back right here. Hopefully you can see that difference. And my legs are staying long. I'm not gonna let them get short because this is hard. I want them to get long so that I can make hard easier, so that other things in my life get easier as a result of this practice. If we want to take it a step further, we can take our hands onto our pelvis, maybe get your pointer fingers to the tip of your ASIS, your anterior superior iliac spine. Say that 10 times fast. All right, here we go. We're gonna put these here and thumbs at the back, and really move your pelvis. See if you notice, did my little rib come up? Well, can I get it back down by turning on my ignition switch? But I still have space underneath my lower back. So I keep moving, 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 keep moving. And now I want to, that's a lot of work. You can do it with your head on the ground. You can also curl up to the tips of your shoulder blades, stack your hands, pull the head towards the wall or space behind you, and let's go again. Inhale, inhale, moving from the pelvis. Boy, I'm trembling today. And let's just do 2 more. Inhale, lengthen. Exhale, deepen. 1 more time. Woo, look at that shake. Let me get some fries with that later. And exhale. Good work. All right, from lower lift, we go into crisscross. Crisscross is gonna look like what you might call a bicycle in your ab work, but it's not. We are not bicycling the legs. We are moving similarly to the single leg stretch, but we are ignition switch on, and we are twisting. Please do not try to bring the elbow to the knee. Try to bring the armpit to the knee. Now, will that make you rock and roll from side to side? It can if you're not using that inner thigh, rub the imaginary wall, play the violin with your legs. Effort. So let's use it, all right? And then one other thing I like to add, and I can't say that I'm always strong enough every single day to do it. Every day in your Pilates practice is going to be a little different. It just is. Be patient with your body. Some days it's going to do things remarkably well, exactly the way you want it to, and other days It's not. All right, so what we want instead is to imagine that there's like a little rainbow right behind your heart, and you are tracing it with the back of your heart from shoulder blade tip to shoulder blade tip. Only the bottom of these guys, right? Not the sides of them. We don't want those on the ground. The shoulder blade tip, up and over as you twist, so that you get into the upper back body core as much as the front side body core, okay? And then the legs are moving and they're switching, because that way we're able to stretch and strengthen and lengthen one side and compress the other side of the spine. Essentially, sometimes when we compress vertebra and then open them back up, that allows for more fluid to move through, more decompression, and just our bodies move better, people. So let's start at the top. If you're up here with me, use that underbutt tuck, that zip of the pubic bone to the navel, and then ignition switches on. The heels should feel pretty light. Fingertips, let's put those puddles in the back of the head, right? The little clay press with the hands. Bring the right knee in. You can keep this leg on the ground if it's a little too much. And exhale. And then let's switch. So I'm going to stick with the ground for a moment and really try to armpit to knee, not elbow to knee. And again, switch. And let's go for a longer leg. Again, inhale up and over. And up and over. Twist, 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 twist. One more each side. Woo, calf cramps today. Up and over. And there are days where it is a lot easier to get off that back shoulder than others. Today, I can tell, is not one of my strong days, but we'll see them together as we practice more and more. From our crisscross, we actually come up. Let's use the roll up to get us up today as a transition. We've just finished our crisscross. Let's take the legs forward, or whatever version of this works for you so far. Arms come up by the hairline, breathe in. Hamstrings and heels, press and ignition. And we come up. And we go over. Good. Let's reach really, really long and just stretch that back body for a second. Breathe into the low back. And then exhale. And now squeeze your sits bones or squeeze your butt, like just squeeze your tush. And feel, look at the sides of your hips. Let's do that again. When you squeeze your tush, you see the outer hips hug in, and that's what I mean by say hug the hips in. And then from there, keep hugging the hips in and grow your spine up nice and tall. From here, walk your feet to the width of your mat. In a studio Pilates class, you might be on a raised mat with what's called, they look like yoga blocks, they're called moon boxes. And they'll let you have a little bit more space. So if you want a little more space to go just in 3 fingers wider than the edge of your mat or so, go for it. Flex the feet. And let's try and put our pubic bone on the ground, right? Because we want our pelvis lining up with our torso. We want to stay in the alignment that we would be in as we move through the world. Now, here, arms out in front of you. Lift up through the crown of your head with an in-breath. And then let's get that tight turtleneck off. Exhale. And for the first one here, again, breathe into the low back. And then let's deepen, sharpen that capital C. Hug the outer hips in. You can see it here, just not as prominent as when the legs are together. Hold it and grow up, 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 up. I like to think of the pelvis in this move as sort of a flower pot, and you're packing in the soil so that the stalk of your spine can grow tall and strong. So let's do that 3 more times. We'll usually do this more together in a class, but this is a long breakdown session, so we're doing less reps than we normally would. Again, inhale, sit tall, and exhale forward. Notice I am not hinging at the hips. This is all making space in an area where otherwise this is constantly compressing down on the low back and we wonder why we have so much pain, like this is alleviating that through active and intentional, strong stretch. Hug the hips in and grow up, 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 up. And 2 more times. Inhale, exhale, squeeze, and stack. 1 more. And again, reach long, long, long. Now, let's do a primer for an exercise we're not going to do right now because it's a little more advanced. Go ahead and reach to the back of your calves and just wrap your fingers behind there, and you can actually hinge forward a little bit. But keep that C curve. Push your heels into the ground. Now push your hamstrings and your heels, just like we did in that primer, and feel how, if you push your heels forward and your legs down, it actually moves the stretch into the low back a little bit, while we still hold that C curve. And then shoulders are out of the ears. And this is primer for something called open leg rocker. And it looks a lot like rolling like a ball, but with long legs. Let's go ahead and lengthen the ankles. Keep pressing the hamstrings down and deepen your ignition switch. So let's inhale into the low back and then exhale. Now that stretch should go all the way from your tailbone to the crown of your head. And just hold here for 4, 3, 2, and on 1, slide your hands back. Tuck your pubic bone to your nose, your tailbone through your heels. Start squeezing the legs together. Ignition switch, come all the way down to the mat. Press your shoulders into the ground, lengthen your fingers. Now here's another fun opportunity to just notice where there's opposition that actually creates a stronger infrastructure. So reaching your arms long, pressing your shoulders into the mat pulls the chest open, but then ignition switch of the top of the abs. We also call that the powerhouse a lot in Pilates. If you hear your teacher say, turn on your powerhouse, that's it, right? Your solar plexus. And when that's activated and your shoulders are down and your arms are long, then there's this stretch of the wall of muscles in between your ribs, your intercostals, and the bigger muscles like on your chest, your more glamour muscles, your pectoralis. And they're being stretched, but also compressed for strong stretch. We love strong stretch in Pilates. All right, so we have that, and then we drag the heels on the ground so that we don't use our hip flexors, we use our hamstrings. And then 1 at a time, legs to the ceiling. Now this exercise, again, as we go along, they get a little more complicated, or I would say their efficacy and detail gets lost in a faster class. How about that? So again, long legs, try and glue the inner thighs and the heels together. Your knees and toes are facing out. Let's lean the hips. Remember, it's about moving the pelvis, not just the legs inside the socket. I can do that all day long. That's just hard work on my legs and my hip flexors again. I'm just tugging on my spine with my hip flexors. But if I move my pelvis, so from the bottom, my ribs are glued to the ground, but I've got this soft space in my waist, and I tip my hips all the way onto the outside of my right hip, where my trochanter, the top of my thigh, my femur bone, moves into my hip socket. That little fist at the top of the bone moves into the hip socket. Lean onto that. Something we don't want to happen is that the left leg gets shorter. That means the whole pelvis didn't come. We want the pelvis to come. And then a little hula hoop. So it's as if we're trying to trace the bottom of our cheeks, our glutes, with our own body, our own muscles. So we're tracing them. We're making a really clean imprint. And notice there's space here from the bottom rib on the ground to the top of the hips on the ground. There's space here because I'm tilting my pubic bone towards my heels, and then around, 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 and then onto the left hip. No stagger in the legs. They're even, and then back to center. So the feeling of back to center is almost like pulling a seatbelt in the opposite direction, but tightening it, like the upward, like pull it tight, but from hip to rib. And the feeling of opening one side, if you think about it that way. So let's think if I lean to my right, then I'm opening my left. So I want to breathe in on my left side and keep breathing in as I stretch it open. This is one of those ones that stretches sort of the front left angle and compresses the back right angle of the spine. And as I go from through the center and across, I start my exhale as I compress the front left and stretch the back right, and it's seatbelt tight. So we move in one direction, and then we move in the other direction. And you see principles from the first exercises in class moving into each maneuver as we go along. Let's try this one together. And one more thing to remember. It's a lot to remember. That's why I'm giving you this big breakdown so that you can come back and visit these sections again and again. Let these individual exercise workshops be something you do one at a time even and come back to. You're going to need them again and again. This will be valuable to your practice more and more and more over time, over years even. But remember, there's more things to remember each time, and that's why we add them. First it was just ignition, then it was zip, then it was not throwing and not using hip flexor but using hamstring. So there's all these building blocks. All right, so this next building block is again a reminder really to reach your fingers glued together long towards the foot of your mat and keep your shoulders down. And if you don't do that in this exercise, you are going to slowly end up with a very short neck, which defeats a piece of this maneuver. So let's keep that active. It does make it harder. Or does it make you stronger? Let's lean all the way to the right, keep reaching the arms, and then let's go around. We're gonna move kind of slow so that we can focus on if that bottom rib popped up or not, and then come center. And then we lean the other way, and we pivot. And center, all right? And again, reaching, shoulders in the ground, fingers and arms long. Inhale halfway. Exhale the other half. Notice that the knees aren't getting shorter and relaxed as my core works. I want them to keep getting longer, but I'm not feeling this work in my hip flexor and my inner thighs as much. It's really where it should be. It's in my barrel of core. This is corkscrew. And in a community class, it's gonna move a lot faster, so let's look at that. You can do one or two more slow. I'm going to show you about two more a little faster. So breathing in, breathing in, again. My neck's trying to get short. I gotta reach my arms longer again. Awesome. Let's take the arms to the ceiling. This is our first foray into how the roll-up can become a teaser and how the two of them can be a transition. So we find our ignition switch, push the legs forward, and we visit teaser, slowly open the legs, lower them down, and our arms go wide into a T shape. This looks a lot like our roll, or not our roll up, but our spine stretch forward, and it's called our saw, because we're thinking about sawing the pinky off with our pinky finger, pinky toe with pinky finger. Not really, that would be morbid, but as we're doing, let's break it down. Arms are wide. If you want your arms forward for this, just to remind your body, go ahead and use that. I'm wrapping my ribs, again, for that position, right? Deep C curve. And then Watch out for your left foot because your leg is going to want to shift as you twist. You can probably really see that. We don't want that to happen. So hamstrings and heels glued to the ground, and just as if your ribs were sort of the ribbing of a water bottle, twist again. Now, my arms are still to the side. I'm going to amplify this rotation by reaching my left arm to my right foot and my right arm backwards. Notice the direction of my palms, this one in the way I'm going, this one pushing energy back, and I'm actually pushing my arms in those directions from armpit, and also imagining that someone is pulling my arms apart. So again, it's push and pull. And in this position, we exhale a little deeper. So we're sharpening this angle of the C curve that's kind of like the angle of the C curve that we were finding by moving our pelvis in corkscrew. Now we're finding the angle by moving our torso in saw. Let's break it down one more time in the other direction. It's a and then the twist of the ribs, press of the palms, back palm pushes behind you, front palm pushes where you're going, and then separate those arms. And this is a lot of stretch around the back body spine. And then you exhale a little more. And that exhale again is that sort of receiving an angular ignition punch from this side, and it moves this side of the spine up, up, up. This side back, or back side of the body. And then to come to center, we inhale up. Let's move it a little bit faster, just a little bit. We're going to exhale, 1, twist, 2, and separate the arms, 3. Inhale, 1, exhale, 2, exhale, 3, exhale, stretch, 4. So notice you have a lot more breath to get rid of than you do to fill the body. At least that's kind of natural for most people, which is why we have a okay, so work with that as best you can. If during the breakdown you need to pause and inhale a little bit before the next exhale, that's okay. Just know that this is how it goes in a class. And you'll see this class this movement going very quickly in class, and you really see a lot of leg shifting and a lot of people just dumping, or even hinging, but now you know better. That's not what's happening. It is this partnered with space, right? So even though there's compression, there's space being made upward, angularly, and pulling apart between the shoulder blades and the collarbones. So everything around this upper part of the lungs is just open. That's awesome. Like, when else in life do we get to do that to increase the volume of our lungs and the space around our spine? Oh, we need it. Thanks, JP. I love that. Thanks, JP, for our Pilates practice, and thanks, JC, for our Psalms sessions. Oh, life is good, y'all. That my Texan is showing. All right, let's partner the exhale and the twist, because that's how this ends up being a faster move. So let's try inhale, and so it's the ignition and the twist, and then 2 arms, and then just one more exhale, 3. Inhale up, twist, and a little bit of compression. And then arms, 2, and exhale, 3. Come up. One more time slow, and then we'll put it together a little faster. Here we go. And, sorry, I'm adding an in-breath. And inhale up. Exhale, 1, 2, 3. Inhale up. Okay. Now we move it quicker if you want to. If you want to keep the breakdown, keep it, because I'm still doing the same amount of breaths, but I'm putting all the movements together. So our pubic bone is glued to the ground, hamstrings, heels glued to the ground. If you have a hard time getting your pubic bone down, it's okay. patience with your body today, and you're not broken. You can get a couple of blankets and put them right underneath your tush, just to the edge of where the meat of your glutes meets your thigh. So they're only from there behind you, and that's going to give you a little bit of leverage. In fact, let me just show you what that looks like. I'll use one blanket, pretty thick. It's a yoga blanket. We come up on this, and notice I'm not way back on here really hanging out. The edge of the blanket is almost, like you can see, it's right there at the bottom of my sits bones. It sort of pours my pelvis forward, right? It's almost hard to hang out back here without dumping into my spine. It's picking my pelvis up and pushing it forward. So this can really help you. And if you need more, stack more, all right? And in fact, we'll do this last one with this here. This can also help if you have a little tenderness in your tailbone. This will feel a lot better too. This one's putting it all together. So it is exhaling and pulling the arms apart and pushing them back, 1, and then do that an nth degree stronger, 2, and an nth degree stronger, 3. That's what we're doing. Right, left, right, left. Here we go. Breathe in and inhale. Inhale. Really watch that the legs don't toggle with this one, because when you're moving it all together, something can be forgotten. Try not to let that happen. We are learning. Breathe in. Inhale. Inhale. Arms down. We're going to finish today's session up with just part of the stomach lying work, a prep for swan diving, and then we'll also finish with a bridge to just open up the front body, because we've got a lot of flexion today. So 2 things that open us up in the front. So bring your legs together, press into your heels, hands to the side, and let's just pivot. And if that wasn't very clean today, don't worry, it's something you can practice, and the stronger your core gets, the easier that movement gets. And we're coming all the way onto our stomach. So for this maneuver, Joseph Pilates borrowed from all kinds of places to look for the things that were the most advantageous to effective movement in the body. And this one has a little borrow from yoga, a little borrow from our upward facing dog or our low cobra. And there's a bunch of other places where we see that, right? With the Pilates push-up, which is what we call chaturanga. We'll find out more, a little more history, a little more lineage as we go together. For today, swan diving usually happens with your legs close together, but I personally have some injury around my sacrum, so I always practice with wide legs, and I also teach beginners or people who are refreshing their foundations with wide legs, and you'll see why. Fingertips under the armpits, elbows to the ceiling. Go ahead and put your forehead on the mat, or watch me for this first one. I'm not putting my forehead down because it'll muffle my voice, but I'm taking my shoulders into my ears, and I'm keeping them that close as I squeeze them up to the sky. And I'm keeping them up to the sky as I slide them towards my hip bones and let that peel my chest off the ground like a little fruit roll up. Now, my hands are pretty light because this work is happening in my back body upper core, or the tips of my shoulder blades squeezing against my mid-spine. And from here, from my left inner thigh, not a bent knee lift, a straight leg lift. And if that's not accessible today, just work towards it, okay? I'm lifting from the inner thigh, and as I lift, I'm squeezing up a little more in my upper body. And then I keep my upper body lift and lower that leg. And let's switch sides. So in my right leg, inner thigh lift, and I squeeze my shoulders back a little more. And I'm still really pretty light in my hands. And let's do that one more time. Left, lift and squeeze. Release. Whew, cramps today, y'all. And right, lift and squeeze. And so now I've got a really strong saddle in my spine. And from here, just pull the ground back with your palms really hard. That's gonna affirm this lift and come right back down. So that's our primer for swan diving that we'll go into more in our next session. Let's push into hands and knees and come right up off the ground. We want to try and do this without swanning off the ground, although you have built some mobility in your back from what we just did, so that's not the end of the world, but we want to really push into the pointer finger and thumb in this little space between so that we're not in the outer wrist, and then into the knees as you push the belly through the back, through a strong plank. And then we'll tuck the toes, hands to the side, pivot, take a seat. Today we're going straight into bridge. And we'll borrow a little bit from yoga for today's bridge. So if you practice yoga and you're learning about Pilates or just deepening, this will be really helpful. And if you don't, you'll have a little peek into yoga practice as well. All right, so let's go ahead and use our tuck of the pelvis, our zip of the pubic bone, and come all the way down. Arms at your sides. Reach your fingertips past your heels. It's just an energy. This old practice of having to touch your feet, by the way, is not really, I mean, you're just forcing as much knee flexion as you can get. It's not going to be advantageous in this practice. So we really want the feet a little further away. And over time, you'll learn that the distance of the feet has more to do with which muscles we're going to be recruiting, right? The closer they are, the more glutes we're working. The further they are, the more hamstrings we're working. For today, let's just find a sweet spot in the middle. Make sure your toes are about fist distance apart from each other, but even, that they're not staggered. And then pressing your shoulders and fingertips into the ground without curling the pelvis, right? We're not sinking the low back into the ground. We want that neutral spine. Just think, lift my hip points straight up to the ceiling. So we press and lift. Now, my body isn't one of the best demonstrators because I actually have a lot of injury in my low back, so there's some limitation here. I have some herniated discs, although maybe that gives you a little bit of hope. I'm just gonna push that out of the way so you see clear underneath me. Maybe that gives you a little hope that this practice is accessible. I have a lot of injury in my spine, and Pilates is accessible to me because I've continued to find that edge and just push it a little bit. Not enough to injure myself, but enough to challenge myself so that over time, more and more and more of this practice is accessible to me. Pressing down, shoulders, palms, four corners of the feet, hip points go straight up to the ceiling. And then from here, this is where we borrow from yoga today. So the big toe mound, not the toe itself, but that bony mound, just keep pressing that down. Take your hands and interlace them on the ground. And then let's roll the right shoulder underneath and then the left one. And try and press the wrist side of the arms into the ground and push the knuckles towards the feet and take a big breath in. Notice that that helped me lift my chest and my hips up a little bit more. And then just unwind the hands. Keep the shoulders and the elbows pressing into the ground all the way through the wrists and the fingertips. And we'll just hold bridge today. Again, four corners of the feet. Keep the glutes active. We're here for 5, 4, 3, 2. Now keep lifting the hips as you hit your ignition switch. So the tailbone's trying to curl up. There's your C curve. The ribs are trying to pull under. There's the top of your C curve. And that's stretching the spine down, down, down. Keep the glutes active until the very last moment. Release their activation. Soften. And let's just do that one more time. Make sure you're not hanging out on the outer edge of your feet. Your knees aren't dropping open. You're not hanging out in that TFL pocket muscle. Press down to that big toe mound, shoulders and palms. Inhale, elevate the hips. Good. Again, borrowing from the yoga practice. Interlace your hands. Notice which thumb you naturally want to put on top and switch. Switch the whole set of fingers that goes first. And then switch which shoulder you want to do first. This is neuroplasticity at its finest, making your body and mind really connect through thoughtful action. Press the wrist side of the arms into the ground. Punch the knuckles towards the heels. Press into the four corners of the feet, inhale the heart and hips higher, and then release the hands and press into the ground and hold for 5, 4, 3, 2. Again, hips keep reaching up, hold the bottom of your C curve. Ribs start to pull the heart down, sharpening the top of your C curve. And then finally, as the bottom ribs start to release the waist, the top of the hips, finally the glutes relax. And we let that go. To finish our session today, let's take our arms by our ears, breathe in. We'll use a leg push to exhale and roll up and over. And really just solidify that stretched C curve we just visited. Hug the hips in, grow the spine up. And then from here, drag your heels to your bum. 1 and 2. Let's cross the ankles, come to all fours. And then walk your legs back. Shoulders under wrists. Again, make sure weight's in the pointer finger and the thumb and this little web space between. Don't hang out in that outer wrist. It won't feel good over time. Let's tuck the toes, come up into a plank if that's right for you. If you need to stay on your knees, you can. It'll still work. The rest of us, stretch legs. Look back and put your toes apart and your heels together. And for today, we won't worry about this big C curve activation. Let's just walk our hands to our feet, nice and strong. And then notice, if you needed to bend your knees a lot to get here, that's okay. But let's try and keep the hips right over the feet and really let your body hang here for a moment. And then push into the front of the heel, not the back of it, the very front where almost you're at the arch of your foot. And send your tailbone to your feet, right? This is the bottom of your C curve. And then pull the ribs under the heart. This is the top of it. Arms start coming out and up. And now from here, make sure that your hips are just a little bit behind your ankles. Are we wrapping? Just remember how we laid down first. Our thumbs up, our elbows forward. And elevate. Arms wide and down. Lift up to lower. And go have an awesome day. You guys made it through your very first, not just Classic Pilates class, but Classic Pilates workshop. And understanding how things work on the mat is going to improve every other practice in your life, whether you are convicted about going to reformer classes, tower and chair and ladder barrel, and the full gamut of traditional Pilates classes or modern classes or yoga, or you play tennis or whatever it is you do. If you're a stay-at-home mom, if you work a 9 to 5, if you hustle and travel a lot, this practice will help. It is made to increase joyful freedom in longevity. I've really enjoyed spending this time with you. I hope you feel good in your body. I hope that this material feels as helpful to you as it's been for me and as exciting to learn about as it is for me to deliver. And I hope you spent time in your Psalms practice today. And if you haven't, now's a great time. Take the stillness of your mind from the stillness of your body. Borrow all this active movement that now needs stillness and quiet, and put it into prayerful practice. And I'll see you next time.